This is my creative phase for the procedural generation project. In the research phase, I created a procedurally generated cave system, and this is what I ended up with in the research phase. So this reminded me of the cave system found in Stardew Valley, so that's what I went ahead with trying to recreate in my creative phase. So what I ended up with was this. So you can see you can destroy resources by clicking on them. They will drop a pickup. The pickups are attracted to the player, and holes or / ladders will spawn so that you can move to the next floor, which is represented up here by the floor level UI. So I think this ended up pretty good. So everything I ended up adding in the creative phase was I fixed the player spawning in walls issue. So now whenever a new map is generated, the player will move to an empty space. I also created prefabs for resources and pickups. I added player environment interaction so that the player could mine resources. Pickups are attracted to the player so the player doesn't have to seek them out. Added a very simple inventory system which just tracks the number of each resource the player has, but I have no UI for it right now. And I added procedural item generation so that resources will spawn randomly whenever a new cave is generated. Also added the chance for ladders or holes to spawn so the player can move into new caves. There's a stamina system or like a mining cooldown that the player has now, so you can't just spam click to destroy better resources faster. And I added the health and stamina bars, although the health hasn't been implemented because I didn't have time to add enemies. Also added a little floor tracker UI to work with the ladders and holes. So some of the issues and problems I had was it took a while to fix player spawning issues. The pickup attraction works by using add force on a pickup game object, which can effectively allow the player to bully a pickup and force it to orbit them instead of having the pickup instantly go straight to the player. I'm also not super comfortable with UI functions in Unity, so the health and stamina bars and the floor tracker took a little longer than I was expecting. And I tried to improve the resource art instead of just the single color circles, but after it took me a long time to just produce bad art, I went with what I initially was using. So what I learned was more UI functionality, mainly through my health and stamina bars. I also learned more about procedural generation. I created the script for the item generation, and I'm getting better at breaking down how similar games work. So like Stardew Valley, I'm getting better at being able to break down how those systems work, and I'm also just getting better at setting up a plan of attack with projects like this that help me set up the foundation layers that I need later on. Let's get into how all the code behind this works. So for my spawning the player issues, I created the spawn player function that moves the player to an empty space in the main room. It chooses a random tile in the main room, and if it's an empty space, it'll move the player to that tile. Otherwise, it will reiterate through this function until the player is spawned into an empty space. To procedurally generate all the resources in the cave, I created this generate items function. So for each tile in each room, it will create a random value to determine if a resource should spawn. So if the tile is an empty space and a resource should spawn, a random value will be generated to determine which resource should spawn. So first it will attempt to spawn a diamond, and then gold, and then iron, and then coal. And then if none of those resources spawn, it will spawn stone. And the destroy items function that is called at the beginning of the generate items function is just used to destroy any previously existing resources from a previous cave. So this is how this all works. It gets an array of all the stone, all the coal, all the iron, and for each of those resources, it destroys each of them. So how resource mining works is this on mouse down function is attached to every resource. Takes the resource's distance from the player, and if the player is close enough to hit the object and has sufficient stamina, the player will lose 1 stamina, and if the resource is not on the last hit point, it will lose a hit point, otherwise the resource will be destroyed. How the player stamina works is the stamina will grow at a constant rate if it is below 1 up until it is at a value of 1. The stamina bar is also equal to the stamina level, so the player knows through UI how much stamina they have. So when a resource is supposed to be destroyed, it will spawn a pickup and destroy the resource game object. It will then try to spawn a ladder. If this random value is less than or equal to the ladder spawn chance, which I have set to around 2 or 3%, a ladder will spawn. Player pickup interaction is pretty simple. This also deals with the player's inventory. So if the player collides with the stone pickup, the number of stone in the player's inventory will be incremented, and likewise for coal pickup, iron, gold, diamond, and then the pickup will also be destroyed on collision. So pickups are simply attracted to the player by adding a force to the pickup in the player's direction. And finally, how our ladders work. We find the distance from the ladder to the player, and if the player is close enough to interact with the ladder, a new map is generated. The player is moved to a new space, to an empty space, and the floor level UI is incremented. All right, thank you.